All right. Let me see if there's an option. Sorry, I'm new to WebEx, guys, so I'm like trying to figure it out as I'm going. Okay, sharing my screen. Okay. And I assume you guys can see right now. If you can't see, then definitely let me know because you should be seeing a presentation. Looks like there's half of it showing up. Let's go back out again. There we go. Okay, that should be good now. And if at any point you guys during this presentation want to just ask me something, you guys can just unmute yourself, speak right out, and let me know if you have want me to clarify anything as I'm explaining, or there will be time for a Q&A at the end. So if you want to wait and have me go over something then, or if you get any questions while I'm talking today, definitely write them down, save them for the end, and we'll go over all that stuff. So this is going to be a guide to muscle gain at home. It'll be partly just a guide to muscle gain in general because it's the same process, whether you're at home or you're at the gym. But I'm going to focus on specific things that might apply to your situation at home, just in the fact that we don't have gyms. So if you are in that situation where you don't have a gym, what you can do, other things you can focus on, and just covering all that stuff about, growing muscle. And again, my name says Mallory here, but it's actually Devon. You can see on the PowerPoint. So yeah, my name is Devon. And a little bit about me, I'm a personal trainer at Lerner, and I'm also a group fitness instructor, but I'm also a student at GW. So there we go. All right, so today in our presentation, I'm just going to cover briefly, why do you want to grow muscle, which you guys are already here, so you're probably already interested in that. But just in case, I'm going to explain some added benefits and then talk about how growing muscle works, how to program your exercises effectively, and then some other factors that could influence that as well. And then after the presentation, a little exercise demo on some good exercises that you can do, maybe when you're at home or at the gym. And then also some time to do Q&A. All right, first of all, why should you want to gain muscle? Well, there are many benefits, and I'm sure you guys know a lot of these. It reduces risks of diseases. It helps with weight loss, and that is because building muscle boosts your metabolism and is just going to make you leaner in general. So if your goal is weight loss, definitely don't just do cardio. You got to have that resistance training in there. It's going to be so good for you, help you reach your goals faster. Boost your metabolism, like I mentioned. It helps with aesthetics, just making you like bodybuilding. It's a whole sport about that. So, growing muscles, just if you just want the looks of them. And then it improves your postural alignment, which is going to help you live pain-free and move better. It's also going to strengthen your bones and joints. Really important as we age to make sure that body is everything's strengthening. And then it reduces the risk of injury in your daily life. So here's an example of reducing the risk of injury in your daily life, what I mean by that. So a lot of people are afraid to lift heavy weights because they don't want to hurt themselves. But when you're lifting weights at the gym and you're focusing on good form and all that stuff, you're not as likely to hurt yourself rather than if you're in your everyday life lifting and you haven't prepared your muscles to lift in that way. And then all of a sudden you're trying to lift something that you can't handle. It's not going to be ideal. So that can lead to injury. So just making sure you're strong is just going to make you really bulletproof everything in your body. This is an example of a common postural alignment. I know a lot of us sit all day in front of a computer, and it's so common to have your head come forward and your shoulders round forward. And over time, this when you do this over and over again, this makes you just stay that way all the time. And so what you can do is resistance train in order to fix that. So you can strengthen the muscles of the back to pull your shoulders back into alignment, which is just going to help you move better and be more pain-free. And then here I just have a graph. This shows, I think this was 2017 data, basically that cardiovascular disease is the most common killer globally. So you can see you have all the stuff on there, not just diseases. There's natural disasters, fire, all types of stuff here. And way surpassing all of these is cardiovascular disease. And if you do resistance training 1 to 3 sessions a week, according to a study by the National Institute of Health, this reduces your risk of cardiovascular disease between 40 to 70%. This was like a large study they did with like a ton of people. Obviously, it's not a tangible number like that, but it is a fact that resistance training just reduces your risk, is the whole point of that. All right, so anyways, now you want to build muscle, you're on board. Yeah, we should do this, Devon. How does this work? All right, that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, how it works. Resistance training, think of it as the stimulus to your body. Now, I got 2 pictures up here. One of them makes sense. It's somebody lifting. One of them, you probably don't even know what that is. So let me talk a little bit about what's going on my screen. Here I have a basic movement, the biceps curl. I picked this because it's really easy to understand. You can see as you go up and you bring the weight closer to your shoulder, that's called the concentric contraction. And then when you go down, you have the eccentric contraction. And the main difference between that two is if you look at the muscle, in one of it, the muscle is shrinking and becoming more bunched up, more round. And on the way down, the eccentric, the muscle is stretching. And you can even feel that. So while you're listening right now, put your hand on your bicep and keep it straight. And then feel how long that muscle is. And then contract, bring your wrist up to your shoulder, curl it up. And you'll feel that muscle bulge up. And that is it bunching together, like you're taking a piece of fabric and bunching it up. That's what's happening. So how you build muscle is on the way back down during that movement when it stretches out. Think of it like, imagine you're stretching out a piece of dough and you're like making it nice and big. So in that picture, they're pulling it apart. And as you stretch it, you might get a little hole in it and it becomes thin. And think of those as little micro tears in your muscle. So that happens during the eccentric phase when you have load, because obviously the bigger load is going to pull you down faster, you're going to do more damage. So that micro tear is sending the signal to your body that, hey, we're not strong enough here. We got to build some more muscle. Then your body knows that you have to build it up stronger than it was before. So the building is being done not while you're doing the exercise, but after. And another takeaway is just because you're sending a stimulus doesn't mean you're necessarily going to build. So just like if your teacher gives you an assignment and says that it's due on Thursday, that's her sending the stimulus. Hey, letting you know you got to do that assignment. But you also need the materials to do that assignment. You need your computer to work, which is like your energy that you need. And you're going to need the time for that to happen. And if you don't have those things, that doesn't mean you're going to do your assignment just because your teacher sent the stimulus. So this is an example. Stimulus is necessary, but not the only factor in this. Here are the different types of muscle uses. So first up, we got endurance. So that is going to be overcoming resistance for a prolonged period of time. You measure that when you do something like how many push-ups can you do in a row? Strength would be overcoming resistance at one time. So that would be how much can you lift for this one repetition? And power is going to be overcoming resistance in the shortest amount of time. So that, for example, is like seeing how high you can jump, because that's going to be power all concentrated into one moment. Now you have different muscle fibers for each of these movements. So if you've ever heard people say like, oh, I have a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers, I have a lot of slow twitch, what that basically means is like your slow twitch is going to be type 1. That's better for endurance. And your fast twitch is going to be better for strength and power. Yeah, so then there's just 2 muscle fibers, and ideally, like you have a mix, and even within each muscle, like there's going to be a mix. Some people definitely do have more than others, but that's just the different types of things muscle is used for. Here's another example in terms of running. So the endurance type 1 is going to be for long distance running, and then type 2 would be like a sprint, and then type 2B would be a short sprint, something that lasts literally like less than 30 seconds. And it's considered anaerobic, meaning you're not using any oxygen for that. So like you're going so fast that you don't even have time to turn oxygen into carbon dioxide. You're relying purely on just like quick glycogen just to move as fast as possible. It's not sustainable. Power, that one would be power. Okay, so that was a little bit about muscle. Now we're going to go into how you can take that information I just gave you and apply it into your workouts and just like program the stuff. Okay, so in terms of rep ranges, this goes into a little bit of what I was just explaining about fast twitch, slow twitch, how you got endurance and stuff like that. And that comes into mind where you pick your rep ranges. So if you're doing something in the 12 to 20 rep range, that is generally working on your endurance because you're just seeing how far you can go in that fatigued state, how many more reps you can keep getting in. Then strength would be your 1 to 5 rep range. And I know I told you guys the definition of pure strength would be how much you can lift in one moment. So technically, pure strength is like technically that one repetition, but the general strength rep range is thought of as 1 to 5 reps because that's still what you're working on is like how much you can lift. And then hypertrophy is a fancy way of saying muscle growth. So if you're saying like your goal is hypertrophy, your goal is muscle growth. And that's generally thought to be the 6 to 12 rep range. Now, these are general guidelines. Hypertrophy is kind of like the happy medium between the two, which is why 6 to 12 reps seems to build more muscle when you do studies in untrained individuals. However, let me explain this picture on the right that will provide a little bit of light into that. So it says the dark blue is like the larger effect. So basically what it's showing is that is like people think like, oh, pure strength is only 1 to 5 reps, pure endurance is only 15 plus, and hypertrophy is going to be the best in the middle. Like pure size, you can see it says, oh, blue, it's best for 8 to 12 rep range. But it's showing that on the bottom, what actually happens is it's a little bit more murky than that. Those are just general guidelines. Now, if you are somebody who trained in the hypertrophy range, 6 to 12 rep range, you built a ton of muscle. Well, you've probably gotten used to that. So if you wanted to send a novel stimulus, a newer stimulus to try and trigger your body again, make it louder, it might be better for you to even go into the endurance range or the strength range, and you might see more muscle growth from that rather than what you were doing before. So kind of like how I told you, the stimulus is it's like telling your body to do something, but that doesn't always mean you're going to do it. A good example for this is like when your alarm goes off and then like it goes off, and if you're the type of person who constantly snoozes it and it keeps going off again and again, you're gonna be like, oh, it's just my alarm going off for the 5th time, it's fine, I always snooze it. Or like if somebody's always asking you to do something, it turns into white noise. That's a nice way to think about it. Like your body's going to be like, oh, we always do this, like we've grown accustomed to that, we made our gains from that, and every so often you got to start switching things up. So that's why rep ranges is a good way to do that. So basically, moral of the story on this slide, hypertrophy is a good place to start, but it's not the be all end all. All right, in terms of rest times, this is going to vary depending on what type of movement you are doing. If you are trying to build muscle, I recommend resting for at least 1 minute. In general, because if you're just doing a movement and you're only resting for like 10 seconds, when you're going into your second set, you're still fatigued. And then you become just training endurance because you're pretty much just doing high rep ranges and turning it all into one big set. And then it turns into cardio. So definitely rest for at least 1 minute. However, if you're doing something that is an isolation movement, and what that means is you're only isolating one body part at a time. An example would be a biceps curl, stereotypical example. So great to use the biceps curl for an example. I already used it once, I'm using it again. But another thing would be like a tricep push down or a hamstring curl, something that's working one muscle group. The smaller muscle group especially applies to this. That's not going to fatigue you as much because you're only using one muscle group. However, a compound muscle group means you're using multiple muscle groups. So in this example, it's a squat, and you can see he's using his quads, his glutes, his bracing his core, and all the little muscles in your hips. That's going to take a lot out of you. Another thing is those are bigger muscle groups. So he's using a lot more weight. You can always squat more than you can curl. See, she needs dumbbells because she's working really small muscles in her arms as opposed to the larger muscles in your legs. So if it's something that's going to drain you more, just keep in mind you're going to have to adjust your rest time accordingly, which is why generally for compound movements, it's recommended to rest 3 to 5 minutes. That is a big range. So where I would think about that is how far, how much are you pushing yourself? How much are you lifting? How many repetitions? This is all going to vary. Power lifters are notorious for going on the larger side of this and resting for like at least 5 minutes because they care so much about how they live. So they want to make sure they're fully rested. Like it's worth it for them to rest an extra 3 minutes to make sure they can lift an extra 5 pounds. But if you don't care quite as much, you can go onto the lower side and go for 2, even 3 minutes if you're just beginning and you're not using quite as much weight. But again, isolation, you can really shorten that. Yeah. Okay, so that was rest times. Now, what type of, oh crap, gotta go back. Okay, there we go. What types of exercises should you be doing? Now, there are many types of resistance training. Resistance training means you are doing an exercise that has resistance. So you're pushing away, there's resistance, you have to use the muscle in order to fight that. And that's how you're going to break down the muscle, how you're going to build the stimulus, all that stuff. But that does not have to be just lifting weights. And there are many different modalities for this. One is body weight calisthenics. So you can just body weight exercises. I want to comment here that body weight is not just for beginners. You can look and you can find like on YouTube, social media, there are people who are so crazy good at calisthenics and have grown so much muscle and can do amazing things just with their body weight. Gymnasts are a great example of this as well, just like tons of pulling strength, upper body strength, especially things like that. There's suspension training. So this means like TRX. I don't think you guys can see my face right now, just the screen, but you can also just be like rings. I have some rings behind me, things that are like hanging. So like a suspension trainer that's hanging, you're going to do exercises on them. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I can show you at the end of this if you're curious about that. There's the traditional weightlifting, bodybuilding style in the weight room where you're doing all these reps, bicep curls, hamstring curls, all that. There's powerlifting, which is going to be, that's like a sport where you do squat, bench, and deadlift. There's Olympic lifting, which is more complex movements, focusing a lot on power. And then there's also class settings. So like what I always tell people is you want to do the workout that you enjoy. A lot of people are going to tell you that this is the best style of working out, but at the end of the day, the best style of working out is the one that you're actually going to do. I just recommend that you find some type of working out that is within resistance training. So if you love running, that's great. Don't stop running, but probably find some other type of resistance training that you can mix into your routine 2 to 3 times a week at most, maybe even one if you want to start out with, which is going to benefit you a lot in the long run. And that a lot of that can come from class settings. If you're new to learning the mechanics and stuff like that, you can have different class settings where there's resistance training are body pump, for example, basic. I teach a strength at home class. That one would be that. Pilates, lots of different things you can do in a class, basically. But I put an asterisk next to this because I wanted to note that most class settings are not going to have those 1 minute rest periods that I mentioned that you should have because it's a class. They're not going to be like, all right, rest, and now just sit there and do nothing while the class is going on. People aren't going to like that. So most classes tend to veer on cardio. For example, body pump, you don't rest at all. You just keep moving. And so that is definitely a good place to start because you're going to make a lot of progress just from doing anything and learning those movements. But after a while, you're going to have to start adding some weight and actually resting. So just keep that in mind with your class settings that you can have classes that have resistance training in them, but most of the time they're going to be mostly cardio. Okay. So here's an example of how you can think about planning a well-balanced workout for yourself. So if you want to start out and you want to do 2 to 3 times a week, or even if you want to train full body every day, this is a great way to, or if you work out all the time, you can think about having all of these movements throughout the week, or you can put them all in one workout and have the perfect workout for your full body. And this is a way to think about it. Instead of thinking about like, oh, legs, arms, in those like general terms, this is kind of like a great way to explain it. So with your legs, you have a knee dominant movement and a hip dominant movement. And I'll explain what all of this means. Upper, you have a horizontal push, a vertical push, a horizontal pull, and a vertical pull. All right, so if that makes no sense, don't worry because I have got some examples. So first up, there's 6 of them total. A knee dominant movement would be, for example, the squat. And you can see that she's hinging at her knees. She's bending her knees. That's where most of the movement is coming from. Even though she does bend to other joints as well, think of that as like a knee dominant movement for the legs. So can anybody say, just use your microphone, if you know another knee dominant movement that you could do for the legs? You can just take a guess if you don't know. No one has a guess?
A lunge.
A lunge. Yeah. Oh, and Alexandra said it too in the chat. You guys said it at the same time. Yes, exactly. Lunge would be another example. All right. Hip dominant movement would be a Romanian deadlift. As you can see, hinging at the hips. That's most of the movement. And I like this one because it shows you guys exactly what he's working. Can anybody think of another hip dominant movement again? All right, that's fine. Another hip dominant movement would be a hip thrust, a glute bridge, and you can do lots of variations of both of these. All right, upper horizontal push would be a push-up because you're pushing horizontally away from you, straight out. Think of a push as when the weight is moving away from your body because you're pushing it away. So another example would be a chest press. Yeah, and then in contrast, a vertical push, for example, you can see pushing straight overhead. Now I put both of these in here because I wanted, this is muscle gain at home. So if you don't have a barbell overhead that could work the shoulders, the same thing would be using the ground. So in this picture on the left, she's kind of doing the same thing as shoulder press, but she's using her body as a weight, pushing her body up off the ground to do a it's called a handstand push-up, but you can think of this as like a body weight shoulder press. And I'll show you another option. This one is very difficult. So afterwards, I'll show you another way that you can target the same muscle slightly easier, a lot easier, whatever your level is. All right, so now we got the pull. So pull is bringing the weight closer to your body, pulling it towards you. These are another example of at home versus the gym. He's got a horizontal row, pulling it horizontally across his body. That's going to be working your back there, lower back, mid back. And then on the left, he's doing a row, but his body is the weight once again. And this is showing how if you don't have something that you can row on, you can get underneath the table and row yourself up towards the table. All right, next up, this is the last one, I believe. So this is going to be your vertical pull. It says example row, but it should not say that. It should say example pull up. Yeah, and there also, I'm going to show you guys after this, I'm going to demo each of these exercises. I'm going to show you a body weight version, a banded weight version. Weight's going to show you how you can like make sure you hit all of these in your workout, no matter what your situation is. So yeah, 6 things. That was, let me just go back and cover that again. Yeah, legs, knee dominant, hip dominant, horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical pull. And then you can put that all together and make your perfect full body workout, or just make sure you're doing all those like throughout the week. So that way, if it's like, oh, wow, I've done legs 3 times, but I haven't done any pulling, or I'm always doing pushing, just think about that. All right. Important part right here. This is the key, because you can do exercises all day, but if you're just doing them and you're not really doing any, making any micro tears in your muscles, like I showed you, you won't be making any progress. So how you can track that, because you might be like, well, how do I know if I'm making micro tears? Like, how do I know how much is enough? It's called progressive overload, meaning you progressively overload your muscles, increasing difficulty over time. The key here is progressive. So not all at once. You don't walk into the gym after not lifting for 3 months, throw on as much weight as you can on the bar and lift a million times, because you're going to be so sore, and that's going to be too much damage to your body. You don't want to do that. You want to do just enough damage that it's the smallest amount of damage possible to do the most amount to your body. So so this is increasing difficulty over time. There are different ways to do this. So not just adding weight, that would be increased resistance, but you can also change your tempo and go into maybe a slower rep range, down slow, add some pauses in there. That's going to make a huge difference in everything that you do. It's going to add a lot of difficulty by adding more time under tension. You can change your form. So if you weren't squatting parallel and suddenly you start squatting parallel, that's making it so much harder. And that is a really valid form of progressive overload, because even though you didn't add any weight, you made it a lot harder and you increase your range of motion, which is always just going to utilize more of the muscle. Or you could add reps, of course. So let's say you can't add any weight, well, practice doing another rep, like push-ups for an example. Even in increased resistance, I included there, if you don't have weights, you could use bands. You could do unilateral training, meaning instead of using both of your limbs, you were using just one of them, making it a lot harder, like a push-up versus single arm push-up. It's going to be a lot harder. And then vector of resistance, this is going to apply mainly to body weight exercises. It means that if you change the angle of your body against the ground, that's going to increase the difficulty. So think about that like if you were doing a push-up with your hands elevated on the table, you have less weight to push up. Rather than if you're doing your push-up all the way to the ground, you've increased the vector of resistance, and then you're going to increase the intensity and difficulty of that exercise. Now, if you didn't understand what I said in that, definitely ask me at the end and I'll go over it with some examples further. Mainly important if you're like training from home, just understand the way things work. All right, last thing up in this presentation, I just want to say there are other factors that affect this. So if you're like, wow, I'm not getting any stronger and I'm training and I just don't know why I'm doing these workouts, I'm not building any muscle. There are other factors: nutrition, sleep, and recovery. So first up, nutrition. Eat adequately, eat well, the basics. You know it's good for you. Eat healthy. If you are not providing enough energy for your body to build the muscles, you will not build them. So just like I told you, if your teacher sends you the stimulus to do the homework and you don't have the tools to do it, you got to give your body the right tools. You have to give them the building blocks. Another thing is that building muscle, like I said, it boosts your metabolism. So along with boosting your metabolism, meaning you need more calories, that means that muscle is very bulky and it's hard to maintain. It takes so much energy for your body to maintain that bulky muscle, and you don't want it to just be sitting around doing nothing. And that's why you burn more calories with muscle, but it's also why you need to give your body calories in order to build the muscle. Because if you are just like providing this damage to your muscles, but you're not eating enough, your body's going to be like, oh, we don't have the type of energy for that. We don't even have enough fat on our body. We're not going to build any muscle, which is why if you're at a really low body fat, it's going to be harder for you to build muscle. Now, if you're in a situation where, let's say, you have a lot of excess body fat on your body, you might not have to focus on this as much because you have more in your energy storage. But that's just a factor to consider, along with enough carbs for your workout. I don't know if you guys remembered, but when I told you about the power, I told you the endurance for strength versus power, and I told you that power was an anaerobic process relying on glycogen. That means basically that when you move into strength and more anaerobic processes, sprinting, heavy lifting, you're going to be using more carbs as fuel. So the more intense your exercise is, the more you're relying on carbs for fuel. So the more you need to eat carbs pre-workout is going to make your workouts go better. Post-workout can help you replenish. Rather than like if you're doing slow, low intensity exercise, you can use more like fats for fuel, but it's just harder when it gets more intense. And then protein is going to be a big one. If you're eating enough calories and you're still not building, you want to make sure that a lot of those calories are coming from protein. So how do you know how much you can eat? So generally the recommendation is 0.8 grams to 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body weight. So that means you want to take your body weight and then think about how much of that is lean body weight. And that's going to be a little bit of an estimation. So you're going to have to think about like how much percentage of you is body fat, and you can just get an estimate and think about how much of that is lean. So for example, if you are a 130-pound individual, so you're going to take 130 pounds, 130 pounds. And then let's say you are 20% body fat. So you would take 130 pounds and then multiply it by 0.8. Because if you are 20% body fat, then the rest of you, that's 80%. And then you're going to get 104 pounds. And that's your lean body mass. So you want to aim for 0.8 to 1 gram of protein, which means you want to be in a range of 83 to 104 grams of protein every day. Now, if you're pretty lean, just use your body weight. But that's just to show that like if you are an obese or overweight individual, you won't need quite as much protein as you think because the body fat's adding to your body weight. So if you just took pure body weight, that can be skewed. Hopefully that made sense. Again, let me know if you have any questions about any of that. Just eat a lot of protein, basically. Eat adequate protein because that's going to be the building blocks for muscle. I did not mention why. Amino acids build muscle. That's what they're made of. Okay. And then recovery, this is going to be a huge thing. I told you guys that the damage is done during the workout, and the building phase is done after the workout when you're building it up stronger than before so it doesn't get hurt again. So that's why it's really important to make sure you're recovering properly. And this has a couple different things included. So the main thing about recovery is sleep. Sleep is recovery. When you sleep, you are recovering. So sleeping adequately, sleeping well, quality sleep. I did a whole discussion on this. It's on the GW Campus Rec YouTube. It's not as long. I think it's about 20 minutes. So if you want to know more about sleep hygiene, that should be up there. But also just making sure you have some rest days in there. You don't want to be lifting every single day of the week really intensely. You want to try and control that intensity. Managing stress, self-care, and of course, making sure you're warming up your body properly so you don't hurt anything. Another thing I want to mention about stress. So just think about it this way. Like if you are really stressed out, your body is like, oh my gosh, we have got so much to work that we got to like get done. And it's really not thinking about like building muscle. It's not going to take that on. It's going to probably be more prone to storing things as fat because you're going to need that protection. Because if you think about like back in the archaic, I don't even know what the word is, like back in the caveman era, when we were there, basically our bodies were like the main stress happened because we didn't have food and we didn't know when we were going to have access to food. So that was why our bodies are going to be prone to store more fat when we're stressed, because we want to make sure that we can survive. Now things are a little bit different, and now people usually die because we eat too much food, not because we don't eat enough food. So yeah, things are changed, but that's just a little bit about stress, making sure that your body is like free of that so you can focus on building your strength, building your muscle. This is one thing that kind of shows a little bit about the process. So you have your workout stimulus here on the left. Then you do the damage. When you're really sore, you got to build it back up so you can see you're down here. Then your body starts building it up and you start recovering. And then you're stronger than you were before. Now, if you lift and you lift once a month, your body is going to just go back down to your normal weight because it's going to get rid of that muscle because they're like, oh, we didn't need that. So yeah, so then there's like, it's going to go back down. So this is showing there's like a little window of opportunity. You want to be consistent is the main thing. So consistency is key. A little tiny bit of change over time. You won't see much change, but all of that stuff adds up, and that's when you make a big difference. All right, so here to sum it all up, here's the formula. Send the stimulus, aka resistance training of any form, provided nutrition, let yourself build, and repeat. And that is how you get those gains. So thank you. Yeah, this says GW Campus Rock on YouTube and Instagram, and my Instagram account there if you want to see more about me posting about workouts and stuff. All right, let me stop sharing now. And now we are back. All right, so remember your questions. You're still going to get a chance to ask all of those, but now we are into the movement portion of this Lerner learning series. You can either, you can just stay and watch and then just listen. If you want to try this, I invite you to try it on, these moves out on your own. And if you want, you can turn on your cameras to make sure you're doing it right if you want to do that. But basically, I told you guys 6 main movements that we do. So I'm just going to give you guys a couple of options for each. I'm trying to see how I can make my camera bigger. And instead, I just made myself disappear. Okay, I cannot figure that out. All right, whatever. We're gonna go back to the other view. Okay, back to grid view. Sorry, I thought I was gonna figure something out, but I didn't. All right, so the first thing was a knee dominant movement. I showed the example of a squat. So when you're doing a squat, let me back up. You want to keep your feet shoulder width apart. You want to keep your chest up, core braced, and the idea is to send your hips back and then down. So when you're down here, you should have your feet glued to the floor. That means your heels are on the floor, so your weight is back, your chest is up, and your hips are going to come down. You might not come down as low, maybe you just come to about parallel, and then you're going to press up by digging your heels down into the floor, squeezing your glutes, sending your hips forward, pressing your heels down. So that's going to be your body weight squat. You can start there. You can do a lunge, stepping back, and for that, you're going to form a 90-degree angle in the front leg. Now, if you want to progress these exercises at home, let's say you don't have weights, you can always use one of these resistance bands. So if you're at home, you don't feel like going to the gym, I think about this on Amazon for like $15. So it's a really good investment because I'm going to show you can do so many exercises with it. So for example, I'm going to step on it, and then I'm going to do my lunge. I'm going to grab low, and then as I press up, I have resistance right there. Now, let's say you don't have anything at home. How can you make this exercise harder? Well, this is the Bulgarian split squat. What you can do is you can put one leg up on the chair behind you, and then you're going to come down, weight in your front leg, knee over ankle, driving up through that front leg. And then this is going to make the exercise harder because you're moving into one individual leg. In terms of hip dominant hinges next, hip dominant movements for the legs. We've got a basic glute bridge down on the floor, and we can make this harder by coming onto single leg. And we can add movement as well. And if you still want to make it harder, you can elevate your feet. You can put them on a wall, or you can put your feet up on this bench. And that's going to make it harder because you have a greater range of motion, and you're going to have to push up with your feet elevated. Banded hip hinge, an example of that for the Romanian deadlift, would be to step on the band again and do your deadlift. So this is going to work your hamstrings and glutes, pulling up like the guy in the PowerPoint that I showed with the barbell. Or you can move to single leg, one leg at a time, hinging at the hips and coming back up. All right, are there any questions about the leg movements that I showed? Nope. Okay, good. On to the upper body. We've got our horizontal push. That is going to be like a bench press, which you guys can do with weights, or you can do a body weight. You can just do a push up, and you're pushing the ground away horizontally. My back is straight. Here are some options for the push-up. So I'm going to show you a bunch of push-ups options from easiest to hardest. So easiest is going to be hands elevated, knees on the ground, and then we press away. If I want to make it a little bit harder, I can keep my hands elevated and go feet on the ground with my knees up. Then if I want to make it a little bit harder, I change the angle, come down to the ground. I'll start out on my knees. And then we've got onto our toes. And then to make it even harder, we can go the opposite way and elevate our feet now. And now I've placed more weight on my hands to do the push-ups. One other honorable mention here is the negative push-up, which is where we come down onto our toes. Try and control yourself the whole way down. And then if you can't press back up, just use your knees to help you. So you just pop up onto your toes, come down, and then knees down. All right, so that is a great example of horizontal push. Again, if you're doing, you can always progress. You can always put weight on your back. Vertical push is going to be a shoulder press, weights overhead. This can also be done with the band. Pretty much any of these exercises can be made harder with the bands. I'm going to do a shoulder press right here. Or what you can do is come into a downward dog position and do a body weight shoulder press by bringing your head down to the floor, pressing the arms straight. And as you can see, I'm using the body as my weight here. And if I want to make it harder, I can even put my feet up on the bench again. And then I have more of my body to lift up. It's going to make it a lot harder. So yeah, you can progress it. And then if you want to go even further, go against the wall into a handstand position like I showed in the PowerPoint. But those are just going to show the different levels for your vertical push. Then we have the pulls. So we got 2 pulls left. We'll start out with the horizontal pull. So you have your row. You can do that with weights. Of course, you can do that with the band by stepping on it and rowing up. Or you can grab a table, get underneath the table, and do a body weight row. So let me show you guys some options here. And I'm going to move the camera. So first option to do a row at home, it's going to be grabbing a suspension trainer like this. I also bought these on Amazon. These cost like $30, I think. You have to hang them from something. And you would just do a body weight row, pulling your body up. And now my body has become the weight. If you do not have a suspension trainer, then you can find a table that's about your hip height. I don't have one here, so I'm going to be using this bar. And what you're going to do is, you're going to come underneath and do the same thing here. So if I was using a table, I would just put my hands on the edge of the table, or you can find a railing like this. Start out with knees bent, chest out, squeeze the shoulders back, pinching the shoulder blades. And then if you want to make it harder, you can extend the legs and come up. Now, another way to make that exercise harder, remember what I told you before about elevating your feet? If you elevate your feet during that exercise, put them on a bench and then row, it's going to be even harder again. So you can always make it work for whatever level, whatever your situation. Then to finish up, vertical pull. The body weight mentioned is definitely going to be the pull-up, but there are lots of ways to modify a pull-up if you cannot do a pull-up. There's, you can attach a band and use that for assistance. You could do negatives, so you could climb up and lower yourself down. If you do not have a bar available, I'm going to show you one move that you can do literally with nothing. You can do it right now if you want to try it. So you're going to come down to the floor, and you're going to lower your body down just like this. Keep your chin tucked and your arms long. And then squeeze the arms back down by your sides, kind of like you're doing a pull-up, but just that same movement, but there's no bar. So up and down. And when you come back, you squeeze your shoulders back and down, pinch them really tight. And as you get better at this, you can add weights in your hand, whatever you have lying around. If you have a towel or a t-shirt, you can roll it up and hold it like a band, or you can just hold a band. And then if you're holding something, you can apply some tension, slightly pulling it out. And in all of those moves, you want to be squeezing. It's going to work back here on your back. So yeah, that was the vertical pull. Lots of ways to do that. And if you're at the gym, easy one is just the lat pull down. All right, so I know I just went kind of rapid fire through a bunch of demos of exercises, and I threw a lot of information about you guys. So now is your time. If you want to ask me to go over anything I just demoed, go over anything I talked about in the PowerPoint, or if you have any other random questions in general about the gym, about muscle gain, nutrition, anything like that, now's your time. Yeah. That was great. Thank you. Oh, glad you enjoyed. Yeah. If you don't have any questions, you're definitely free to go. And this is all I have prepared. Again, there's lots of stuff on the Campus Rec YouTube. Yeah, you can follow them on Instagram if you want to know more. Oh my gosh, I didn't even mention, I do teach a strength at home class. So if you guys are interested in building strength at home, GW Campus Rec classes are free, and I teach a basic body weight strength training class. You don't need any equipment. You can do it at home. There's a Zoom link. If you need help accessing it, let me know. And I teach it a few times a week. So yeah, definitely a good option. I also, on my Instagram, I post lots of body weight workouts, if that's something you're interested in. I put it up in the PowerPoint, but if you didn't see it, it's at Never Otta, OTTA, food. And that's it. And you can also ask me more questions on there if you think of any later. So if there are no questions, then yeah, then just thank you guys for coming, and I hope you learned something.
So I have a question.
Okay.
So I'm a super beginner in strength training, so I've never done it. So everything you did looked great, only really fast, and it's hard to, like, what's the best way to learn, like just a simple workout that you can start with?
Yeah, so I showed a lot of options. So let me go over what the easier beginner ones would be. And definitely, I do recommend coming, actually, not to do the self promo, but coming to my strength at home class. I go over all of this stuff. and you can like do it in
Is that
person.
the class that's at 11 o'clock in the morning? Is that
Uh,
the 11 o'clock class?
there's one at 11 and there's one at 5 p.m. on Fridays and there's one at 10 a.m.
Okay.
on Sundays. So there's lots. But if you can't make it, no worries. I'll show you some here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so a good one to start out with, definitely master the squat. So if you want to try it again, feet shoulder width apart, brace your core, and keep your shoulders back. So you're just standing upright. And then send your hips back and down like you're going to sit in a chair. And then press right back up. And you can even try that if you want to grab a chair, actually, and practice coming down to touch your butt to the chair. And that's a good way to practice. Slowly working your way, maybe trying like shorter chairs, so your height. So if you have something taller, that's going to be a little easier because you're only going to have to come to like here rather than if your chair is really low. So that is a great one. Have you ever done a squat before?
So I've resisted doing them because a few years ago I had a meniscus tear in one knee and it's still painful. So
does it hurt
I've
when
been told to do stretching and strength building knee exercises.
Yeah.
I just don't know like which one will hurt it and which one wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. So in general, like you want to do stuff like you're going to have to do stuff that bends your knee because that's going to strengthen the joint. And I know it can be hard to do that on your own. So definitely like physical therapy, personal training is great for that. But if not, you just have to know that like if it's physically hurting you in your joint, like stop doing it. And you want to make sure you're doing it right. But if you feel like pain in your muscles and it's hard to know the difference, sometimes I know, but then that's good. So definitely what I would recommend for you if you're worrying about your knees is practicing coming down to a chair, sitting down, and then standing back up. And this is going to make sure when you're doing a squat, you're not coming into your knees and like putting too much weight there because that's definitely going to like hurt you if you do it wrong. But having the chair back there can reinforce oh, I have to swing my hips back and reach for it and then come back up. Another thing is going to be the glute bridge. So that's the one where you're on the ground, feet down, send the hips up, squeeze the glutes. That's going to be a good one that's going to strengthen your glutes without putting any strain on your knee at all, like if you're worried about that. So I definitely
Could you just do that once more?
Yeah. So you're going to be down on the ground on your back and then walk your feet up, bring your heels in close. You should be able to like touch them with your hand. And then you're going to squeeze your glutes, press them up, pull the shoulders back. And you can see that my ankles stay right underneath my knees. And then you can also practice adding movement, coming down and coming up.
And how many times should you be doing those?
I mean, until it starts, if you can do it like 10 times and it's easy, then practice going to single leg and coming up on one leg. So, I mean, you want, again, like I said about the rep ranges, like it depends. You want something that's going to be challenging. So if it's really easy, you should probably progress the exercise. If you're at the point where you can do like 50 and it doesn't do anything, then yeah, make it harder, find some way to make it harder. But to start, see if you can do like 15, work your way up. It depends on your own strength. So that's hard to say without like training with you and like seeing how you're doing.
Okay.
Oh, it just happened. Oh, okay. Sorry, I just exited out of it. I started freaking out. Oh my gosh. I can use technology, I promise. All right, yeah, so that's good. And then practice practice those body weight movements. They like I could go on, but those are some great ones to start.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and does anybody else have any questions? Who was that who asked that? Was that I didn't see.
That was Susan.
Susan. Okay, yeah. Okay. Oh, great. Yeah. And yeah, practice those. And yeah, definitely keep thinking like where you can go. I do post I post body weight exercises on my Instagram. You can definitely try them, and just see how it feels. I also do like personal training if you wanted to like discuss this more in depth and like really work together. But if not, then I hope you definitely learned something today and can, get started.
So how do we do personal training? How do I do that?